Okay, everybody, hi. Welcome to a webinar on the Autodesk Telecom Module. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what it is, just, what changes have been made to a certain extent over the last few years. A demo of the current state of the functionality, which I think is actually really exciting. It's we just did a dry run of it earlier today. And I think it's an incredibly competitive product at a really reasonable price point to manage fiber assets for smaller and larger utility campuses, and we would love to hear your feedback as well. So just for those who may not know, the Telecom Module is a fiber and copper plant design and records management tool based on AutoCAD Map 3D. You've got a little picture of the user interface there. It's based on what's called industry model technology. So that is a completely open data model that is entirely configurable, user configurable, in fact, for equipment and those kinds of things. It works the same as the Electric North America model or the gas model, the water, wastewater model. It is a plug-in effectively for AutoCAD Map 3D. It was developed originally by Autodesk Consulting when I was actually even still an employee of Autodesk, many years ago now, 2006, 2007. And a number of customers are using it. Won't name them all just for confidentiality reasons, but suffice to say some, quite large utilities, some very large cities, and a lot of smaller organizations, and one really interesting campus customer that we're wrapping up right now. We're finishing a project with them, and it's entirely on SQL Server now as well. So the open access of the Telecom Module has been made more widely available for different databases. It's actually available through DLT, or will be in the very near future. We've produced a DLT price list for both the package itself and a sort of, predefined set of package services to deploy it and configure it for specific customer engagements. So another couple of things I want to mention about, why this module is important. So first of all, it's accurate and timely records for design and analysis. Frank will walk us through a really detailed, kind of very realistic scenario for putting in a new circuit. All of the circuit records, all of the equipment records are in the database and can be reported on to any source, internal or external. They're just database records. It's not proprietary data in a DWG file. It's 100% open database information. The other thing is the tool has a circuit builder that allows you to automatically generate shortest path and lowest loss circuits. And it allows you to run detailed reports on the loss and the properties of a circuit, and a whole series of other reports that we'll go into as well. That means that, you've got at your fingertips while you're doing design a really good picture of not only the physical pathway that the fiber takes, or the copper now, that we've extended it for copper, but also the loss parameters and the distance, including slack length. Another tool that's in there is an OTDR trace, which is really great for facilitating in fault location. So you can put fault OTDR readings on an access point, and it will trace, including slack length, up to the point where the break might have occurred, which facilitates digging to try to fix the problem. As I said, it's a totally open database, so you can share network data with your own organization and potentially with partners who might be doing third-party construction or digging or other things. Another really useful query related to circuit tracing and those kinds of things is the serviceability query. So it makes it much easier to find out who you can service based on their proximity in terms of wire miles to a hub hub or a central office or something like that. Finally, it's got a work order management module that allows you to track the transactions of your design through a workflow process. So you do your design, you can do your construction, and then when it's activated, you do your as-built mapping to make sure that the records are correct. You promote that to live. Many of you are already familiar with that concept and are using Oracle Enterprise to do it. What we've done recently as part of the effort on SQL Developer is to put a sort of jobs light module in place that follows the same workflow but provides a much simpler, lower cost entry point to have not 100% of the features of the Oracle Enterprise jobs, but a good number of them, and certainly allows you to protect the as-built data from in-design changes so that you have the two views of the data, the live data and the as-designed data. Another important thing just to remind everybody of, that the technical platform here is completely standard. AutoCAD Map 3D fully supports CAD standards, paperspace and mapspace layouts, map books. It's incredibly easy to create work order packages of a number of items. So you not only have the geographic view, but there's a number of auto-generated reports of the inside plant details, like that AutoCAD tap diagram that you're seeing there. Those are actually all AutoCAD byproducts that can be published to DWF or saved as PDF and put into a little booklet that can be used to describe the construction details for any particular project. From a database point of view, it's 100% open data in either Oracle or SQL Server now. So the cost of ownership is well within reach of most customers, and all of that data is open and easily shared across applications throughout the organization. There's Google Street View integration, which allows you to get really solid context information for the design. So you can actually see the site location, see the details, and kind of anticipate some of the issues you might face when doing the design. Allows you to do a better kind of context for especially outside plant equipment, pads, poles, and these kinds of things, because it allows you to actually see exactly where you're putting the equipment and what is there in the field today. Another important aspect that is really just a property of AutoCAD Map 3D is ArcGIS data access and data integration. So there's two ways in which this works. First of all, you can easily use and share GIS data from pretty much any source that FDO supports, which is the back end of AutoCAD Map 3D for data access. We've just recently delivered to Autodesk an ArcGIS 10.2 FDO provider that allows you to do full SDE access, personal geodatabase access, file geodatabase access, so you can bring data from other sources in, including the ability to do some degree of shared structure integration. That's not totally out of the box, but because it's all open database, it's really quite easy to do. On the other end, ArcMap and other tools can pull from the open GIS data formats that are being stored by the application. So in that context as well, not only can you use ArcGIS data, but ArcMap and other users within an organization can easily add layers and connections to the fiber or copper data that you have stored in these databases. And finally, of course, Autodesk Infrastructure Map Server, the web tool that is really a super affordable, very flexible tool from Autodesk, can publish this just like it publishes any other Map 3D data source. So it's easily published to the web, and from the web it can go and so on. So that's the technical platform, and I just want to go through very high level, introduce you to some of the features so that you know we're prepared, so we see things in context with Frank's demo. One important part is the fiber ribbon here. It's just another Map 3D fiber tool. There's the fiber display model. It's a display model like any of the other display models you might see in Map 3D. There's the industry model there. One really nice feature of the tool is that all of the structures and all of the relationships are really detailed and nested. So in other words, if I have a structure, like let's say it's a building, Within that building, I might have a room. Within that room, I might have a rack, and so on. All of that hierarchy of, the containment relationship for structures is stored in the database and easily managed. And when Frank shows the demo, you'll see how you use that information to make sure you're designing right down to the patch panel, the jumper, and the right level of detail. Because this tool isn't just about managing cables, it's about managing the actual fibers and all of the infrastructure right to the circuit level. The other thing is, this is sort of related to the ArcGIS aspect. Data can come from any source. It's just Map3D here. So, any data you can get into through Map3D, including existing DWG contractor drawings, shape files, SDF files, ArcGIS databases, all of that can be aggregated to make a really detailed context map for the CAD drafting that does take place when you're doing design to make sense. And in this case, we also see a raster image, which is put into the context there. So you've got a really great context for digitizing accurate facilities. The other really important feature that we think saves a lot of time is the circuit builder, and Frank's going to go through a demo of that. But this allows you literally to just pick two endpoints where you have cables available, and if there is available infrastructure, it will find a path for you. In fact, if there's multiple pathways, it'll find all of them and give you alternatives and do the loss calculations so that you know exactly what you're looking at from a circuit length and from a loss calculation perspective. Sometimes on a really big database between two really distant endpoints, that can take a little bit of time, but if you think about the savings in terms of design time by finding this circuit automatically compared to digitizing the whole thing through the whole pathway, it's a really significant time savings. So that is really, I talked about the detailed structure information. We want to get to the demo and let you see a really realistic scenario for how the product works. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Frank Mizarek, our VP of Engineering, and let him take charge.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. So what I've done is I've started up Map3D, and I've opened my project that contains the industry model with the telecom module, and that's what you should be seeing now. So for this demo, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a scenario in which we want to create a new service at 180 Main Street, and we want to create a circuit from an existing site to 180 Main, and as part of that scenario we need to create a new fiber cable, and we're going to run that from an existing site, 312 Main Street. So that sort of lays out the foundation for the scenario. So first thing I'm going to do is to locate the site, 312 Main, where we're going to start the fiber cable from. And so on the left side here, you can see me clicking. This is the Industry Model Explorer. And so I'm going to use the Industry Model Explorer to locate the information or the site that I'm interested in. So you can see we have different topics, telecom, with different categories, and then I went to the structure category, and then I'm going to go on telecom site. So I'm going to click Show Form, and so I'm going to use the form to do a filter query in order to find the site that I'm interested in. So I clicked on Filter, and I'm going to type 312 Main. I click Filter, and so you can see that it's found two records with that same name. So I know that I'm interested in the first one, and I'm going to click on the button here, and that's going to take me to the site that I'm interested in. So this is the site where I'm going to actually add the new fiber cable from, and we're going to add it to the new site at 180 Main Street. So I need to bring in external data source in order to get the property information. So just like standard map function, I have data connect dialog, or connect to data. So this allows me to connect to different data sources, whether it's ArcSD, ArcGIS, or SQL Server and so forth. So you can see I already have some shaped data sources set up here, and I've pulled in a few layers, one for property addresses and one for property parcel polygons. So that's over here in my display manager. So I'm going to click to enable those. So you can see now these are the shape files that are showing up. So in order to find the location at 180 Main, I can use the standard map functionality to show the data. So I'll show data table on the property addresses, and you can see that down below here. And so I can filter the data then to help me find the address that I'm looking for. So I'm going to filter on street name, and I'll type in Main Street, apply the filter, and then I'll order the street numbers, and then I'll just scroll down until I find 180 Main. And there we go. So I select that, and if I had auto zoom, it would automatically zoom. But I can right click and say zoom to, and there's the feature that we're interested in. So now I know where I need to start, which is down here, and where I want to go to. So in order to run a cable, the first thing I need to do is add a fiber location to that site. And so I'm going to go over back to my industry model here, and I'm going to click on the second button here, the Workflow Explorer. So with the telecom module, one of the things is that everything is controlled through workflows. So all creating of structures, editing, creating of facilities, and editing, deleting, and so forth are done through these workflows. And these workflows are also available up top. You see there's a fiber tab, and there's also they're also available here. So there's two places that we can do that from. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a fiber location. So I click on fiber location, and then I'm going to say execute. So you can see that we get this message, current job is read only, so please activate an open job. So we are currently in a live mode, so this is a version database, so we need to create a job first before we can do any edits. So let's create a new job, call it 180 Main new service. So now we were in a job. Now we should be able to now add that facility. So I execute. Hang on. There you go. So there's our facility. And I'll say enter. So that's our fiber location. So once I place it now, I'm going to get the attribute dialog. So that's going to allow me to populate attributes for that. So I'll give it a name so that I know where it is. So 180 Main, I'll just name it as the address. We can add some other information as well. And I'll just update and close that. So you can see I have my fiber location now. And you can see from the legend for the display model that this layer, we have fiber location filled with the white fill, indicating that there's no equipment. So fiber locations with equipment, as you can see here towards the left, are filled with green, so indicating they have equipment. So in order for me to add a cable there, I need to add in my enclosures and equipment and terminating patch panels and terminating equipment. So there's a very specific hierarchy in terms of the way things are done in the telecom module. So we have structure. Within a structure we have enclosures, and then enclosures house equipment and cables. So first thing I need to do is to add the enclosure now. And so I'm going to add a room first. So I'll I clicked on the enclosure to add it, and I'm selecting the structure. And I can select multiple structures, so I don't have to do just the one. And as well, I can enter the quantity of enclosures that I want to add, so I'm just going to add the one. And so this is my room, so I'm just going to name the room. It's room number 123, and we'll close that. Now, within the room, I'm going to add a cabinet. And again, so now it's asking me, because it's a hierarchy, I can add the enclosure at the top level, or I can add enclosures can hold other enclosures. So the room in this case is going to hold the cabinet. So I'm going to select the room enclosure, and then I say OK, and then I give it, again, a name, and we'll update there. So now that I have my enclosures the way I want them, I'm going to go ahead and add a patch panel into that room, the cabinet. And so you can see I have all my equipment here, or different types of patch panels. Now the important thing to note here is that these patch panels, these are all configurable with using the administrator product. So, these are customized specific to your particular needs, or configured according to your particular needs. So I can click Execute. And again, it's basically the same process. We pick the structure, we indicate how many pieces we want of equipment, and then we select which enclosure we want to place that particular patch panel. And so I'll just name it there. And I'll just give it some context. So for when we look at reports, we'll easily be able to identify that particular patch panel. And lastly, I'm going to add a card so that we can terminate our future circuit on. And again, I'll just add a bit of room information here. Okay. Yeah, and so one thing I want to mention that we can do is, and Steve had mentioned earlier with the Google Street View, I wanted to show that, but I quickly passed over it, so I can go ahead and do that now. But actually, first thing I want to show though is, if I edit the site, one thing we can do is we can associate documents with. So if we have, PDF or other drawings or reports in Excel, we can associate those. So I can click on this document manager, and it gives me a new form. So if I want to associate a document, I can click on Add a New Record, and then I can pick it up from my file system, the document that I want. And then, so I can view it there. So you can see I associate an existing drawing or schematic associated with that site. So again, that's something as well you can do. I click Insert. Now I close. Now I have one document available for that particular site. And if I go...
Frank, you can have any number of documents associated with that too, including other floor plan, DWG files. Pretty much anything you might want to store there can be stored, 3D models of a site, whatever you need.
Yep. And so now if I'm working at that site and we want to get take a look at the Street View, so we have the Google Street View integration with that site. And it comes up in this other window here. I'll just expand it for now. So you can really get a view, of what's existing there without actually going to the site, standard street view functionality. So I'll just quickly close that. Okay, so we've added our new site, we've added the enclosures, we've added the equipment. So now I can go ahead and digitize my cable. So I'm going to go back down to the start at the 312 Main Street site where the cable is going to originate from. And I'm going to create a new cable. So I'm going to create fiber cable in underground conduit. And we're going to create a 6 fiber cable. So I click on this workflow and execute. And so the start point is this particular enclosure. And I'm going to use the existing path. And I hit enter, so I digitized the path for the cable. Now, so basically it's going to, just like with the structure or enclosures and equipment, it's going to ask me, which particular enclosure I want to associate with. And it's going to do that for both at the start and end locations. So I'm going to associate it with this particular room at the start, and then are going to add it to our cabinet at the end point. Now, because I digitized along the existing path, it's going to ask me if I want to install this cable in an existing duct already. So I'll go ahead and say yes. And same with that segment. It asks if I want to install in the existing duct. So I have the option yes or no, so I say yes. And now it's gone ahead and create the cable. And I'll quickly give it a name. And say update and close. So now you can see our cable is there. It's in the existing span or ductwork. So if you looked at the display model legend, you can see that this turquoise color indicates that there's already, this contains both fiber and copper cables. And we have the new span here, duct, that we just added to service 180 main, and that's blue. So blue is indicating that's just fiber only is contained in that span. So now we have that cable drawn. So when I laid out the scenario in the beginning, I said we wanted to create a circuit from an existing site. So I'm going to go back and do a search to find that site where I want to start from. So let's create a filter, and the site is named VPD Annex. I'll say filter, and I'll navigate to that site. So there it is highlighted. So you can see we're going to go from here, and up here is where our new site is. So I'm going to use the circuit builder to help me find a path. So again, this is go back to workflow. So this, just like everything else is on, this is on the workflow manager. So we have under the category connections, we have various operations, but we have something called auto circuit. So auto circuit, when I click execute, asks for a starting structure and an ending structure. And so once it has the structures, then I get the circuit builder dialog. We'll just use single fiber for now. And so I click generate alternatives, and it starts looking for options. So basically it does a structure trace to find a structural path, and then it does calculations to find the logical path for connectivity, and it finds based on on the loss and capacity, right? So you can see here we have capacity 30% is being used. and we see the distance as well. So if I select this, so we can see the actual path that it found from here. And if I click on the detail calculation, it's going to show up, a detailed loss calculation report. So that's right here.
And one of the important things about that is, you see the details of that. All of those loss parameters are specified from the configurations and the specifications of all the equipment. So if you have different equipment with different loss specifications, you'll get a different loss report. And all of this is calculated dynamically on the fly, which is super useful from a design point of view, because you can, get a lot of information automatically that you would otherwise have to, do calculations for manually, or use maybe some other tool to generate the calculations.
Okay, I'll close that. So also we have an installation path calculation. And again, details about the specific path along with, GPS coordinates, ports and cables involved. Okay, so now I selected that. So if I click OK, it's going to go ahead and create the circuit. So I can choose an existing circuit, or I can create a new circuit. So I'll create a new one. Just call it give it a name indicating where it's coming from and to. And there's my circuit, and of course I can populate additional attributes if I wish. So now I can actually go ahead and trace that circuit from the workflow here. So I can trace any circuit I want. This is the one we just created, so I'll go ahead and trace that, and there you go. So that circuit is traced, showing the physical path. So one thing I want to show now is I'm going to go back to my the new site that we added, and if I select that, and if I click on Connection Editor, this is where we can manage the individual details and individual connections, and we can make connections at either individual fiber level, or at a grouping level, or at a cable level. So I'm going to select the cable here, and I click on Select Left, so it's taking the left side of the cable. So you can see we have the cable with each of the individual fibers, and you can see that we have the circuit. So this is the circuit we created. So it was created on that fiber. So the one thing is it's in red, the lettering's in red, so that indicates that the circuit is not terminated. So the one thing we have left to do is to terminate the circuit. So I'm going to go ahead and connect it up to my patch panel. So I click on that, and I'm going to connect it to the first position. Click on circuiting here, and then I'm going to click Create Circuit, and it wants to use existing name, of course, which is what we want, so I say yes. And now I'm going to go over to the patch panel, and I'm going to navigate to the other side, and I can connect it up to that piece of terminating equipment. So now we're terminated on this side. So we need to go back to the other end of the circuit and finish the terminated on that side. Let me just didn't quite want to do that, but I'll just wait for it to refresh for a second, and then I'll navigate over to the other end. Okay, so I'm going to click on this, and so I can find the circuit on this particular cable. I can actually, instead of navigating one time, which was what I was doing, I can click on this, and that'll take me right to the end of the circuit. So now you're going to see that the structure changes. So the current structure now will be the VPD annex structure because that's where the circuit originates from. So there you can see that's the current structure now. And here's on the patch panel where that circuit where the auto circuit created the circuit up to is the patch panel here. So I can go and find a piece of terminating equipment, and I know that these are all used, but this last one has some availability. And so I can go here, select the first position, and create my circuit. So now you can see that it's now blue. So we've successfully terminated the circuit on both ends, and we've completed that process. So yeah, so we've basically created the circuit, we've successfully terminated it. So now we can go about and generate some reports on those. And so the first thing I'll do is so again, under the reports workflow here, we have a number of different types of reports. So I will generate a circuit diagram. I click execute, pick the circuit that we just created, and so we now have a circuit diagram report. And again, as Stephen was mentioning, these are dynamically generated based on the information that's available. So, you know, we see where we have the two sites, 180 main and the VPD annex, and then we see how they're connected up at those sites to the cards with the jumper to the patch panel and which fiber numbers. And then we see the details of the path in between. I'll go ahead and close that.
And essentially what you're doing with all of these different reports is building up a work package, you know, between the Excel spreadsheets which list all of the access points along the pathway and all of the work you have to do there and all of the, you know, basic details, address, GPS location, and then, you know, the FDU table diagram, circuit diagram, tap diagrams. All of these things effectively give you real AutoCAD DWG files that you can then publish to PDF or DWF to have basically you know, a work package for the installation of that service.
Yeah, and I'll show one other report here for the FDU table diagram, basically the connection diagram. So there it is. Click OK. So we can see the cable assignment table. So with the patch panel here, and we can see details at each port in terms of what the connections are. So if I go down to the one we created, so you can see the port 13, the jumper. There's the terminating panel or card. And then we can see where, you know, details about where it came from. So, you know, we can see the 180 main site with the 6 fiber cable. Excuse me. And so that provides, you know, that information, the patch panel at that particular site. And so I'll close that. Now one last thing. So if I switch over to Job Explorer, so you can see now I have all the details related to the job that I'm in terms of what features were inserted, updated, and deleted as part of the process. And you know, with that information we now can generate, you know, we can build materials and things like that. So I don't know if Stephen wants to mention a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I mean, if you had a database of, you know, costs for equipment and inventory model numbers and labor rates for installation and that kind of thing, And we have configured that for some customers. A simple view that actually rolls all that together can do the bill of materials for the job pretty easily. And again, one thing I'd like to point out is, you know, a lot of what you're seeing here is actually still available in the SQL Server version through what, you know, we might call a jobs light capability, which, you know, still keeps track of all of the transactions in a job, you know, with some of the features of the Oracle Enterprise version of that.
Okay. Yeah. So, so last thing, basically, I just want to show that when you know, I switch back to the live view. So I'm in my job. Go back to live view. You know, so there we are back to our original state. So the job, you know, the features aren't promoted or in the database as records until we actually promote that job to the live state.
That's incredibly important just from a job management point of view. I mean, there's no confusion in this way about what's in design, under construction, or as built. You have total control over that workflow process to make sure that, you know, you're tracking transactions through what could be very long life cycles for some jobs. They could go over, you know, several months, and you know, you want to make sure that you're able to manage those transactions very carefully throughout the process with the appropriate level of checks and balances, reviews, and that's, you know, relative to the job's capability.
Yeah, and so I think that concludes the demo portion.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. Couple of closing thoughts. You know, it's important to remember not every customer is the same. Data migration is always an issue. There's training that's always required. You know, you're looking at a kind of $30,000 to $40,000 entry point as a minimum investment to get this up and running. The product has an out-of-the-box installer that works like anything else from an Autodesk product point of view. And of course, because it's from an industry model, easily published to the web. And we have a number of web tools that we've been providing that, you know, can take it onto Android, iPad, or any other mobile platform, as well as, you know, using the AutoCAD tool to view it. And as other final point just to consider, from a data integration point of view, you can really share that data widely with the organization because all of it is just open data stored in either an Oracle or now a SQL Server database. Frank didn't do a copper demo, but the model is now extended to support copper as well. And we have deployed that at one customer in particular, and we're deploying it now at another customer in the southern U.S. At a campus level. So, and that customer is actually on SQL Server. So, you know, we actually have live customers using both the copper tool and very soon the SQL Server database version of this. And we're really excited about it. And, you know, if any of you have feedback, we'd absolutely love to hear it. We're constantly trying to improve the product and to, you know, make it more suitable for the kinds of customers who already have AutoCAD, know how to use that tool, have records and spreadsheets and DWG files, who might be able to really change the way they do their fiber and copper management and design. As that service becomes more and more important, both in terms of internal IT networks, but also in terms of providing, you know, service to business customers and even to, you know, the public at large, and dark fiber to other service offerings that, you know, are trying to offer services on top of it. So it's a hugely growing market, and this design tool, I think, as you could see in just a few minutes, you know, you can get a design laid out that's, you know the loss calculations, you know where everything is going, you have detailed diagrams of all of the detailed connections. That's a pretty compelling story as far as we're concerned. Okay, thanks very much. Thank you. Have a great day.